We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and our topic today is challenging state climate laws. And with us, the great Steve Gottingham. Steve has four books, I suppose, and one of them is with more than 100,000 copies in print. And he follows some very strong positions in terms of environmental issues and energy, specifically for renewable energies. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Armando. Great to join you again.
Yeah, I put my bio here, but it's not important to part of the show is Steve today. Steve, let me start. So you sent me some slides. Please feel free to ask to share when you want.
Okay.
My first point for you, Steve, is the following. Federal laws and state laws are so different among them. So aren't them complementary?
Well, sometimes they are complementary. It depends, but even state laws differ from other state laws. So we have a lot of different things going on in the United States right now, and especially with President Donald Trump in the White House, and he is really changing the scene on energy and climate, public policy, many other things. And earlier this month, he issued another executive order. He had issued orders primarily that prior to that we've talked about, I think, about halting licensing for offshore wind and reducing payments to green energy and a lot of other things. But he just issued a new executive order that was titled "Protecting American Energy from State Overreach."
Wow.
And what he said is that some of the states are passing laws which are overreach from their policies. They are unconstitutional, and usually they are laws that are seeking penalty payments from global oil companies or energy companies or fuel producers. And he tasked his head of the Department of Justice, which is our chief legal agency, Pam Bondi, to identify all state and local laws that are connected with energy that are either unconstitutional, preempted by federal law, or otherwise unenforceable. And he also directs her to propose measures to roll back those laws. And this is really a big deal. This is probably a first time in history where something like this has happened. During the Biden administration, the first Trump administration even, and the Obama administration, states were free to go produce their own laws. They often got waivers from the Environmental Protection Agency to do so on various topics. But now Mr. Trump is going to be joining the side of fuel companies in challenging these laws.
But I'm not sure that I'm right, but it seems that the new president is against laws in climate and in environmental, and he's against of that.
Well, he does. Yeah, it does. He hasn't said all that publicly, but that's what he is doing throughout the administration. And you can pop up the first slide if you like.
Oh, sure.
And we'll talk about this executive order a little bit. So we have.
This is a regional law, Vermont.
Yeah, well, the state of Vermont. Did you get that first one up there? Yeah, you've got it. Okay. So one of the states is the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont passed a thing called the Climate Superfund Act last year. And the act states that fossil fuel extractors or crude oil refiners should be held responsible for costs due to climate damage. And they seek millions of dollars and every year from these companies that are producing fuel. And they're doing it for the years from 1995 through 2024. And they're one of the states. Another one is the state of New York. The state of New York also enacted its own version of a Superfund Act. And they're expecting that was just in December. They're expecting to collect $3 billion a year from the fuel companies
Wow.
And these laws are based, they have a couple different problems. Maryland is also doing the same thing. Other states are considering it as well. So they have several major problems. The first is that these laws are trying to assess penalties on oil companies for their emissions across the world and in other states, not just the state of Vermont or the state of New York.
Mhm.
And that's what, by the way, Mr. Trump in his executive order called these, let's see, what was the phrase that he used? He called these extortion laws.
Wow, extortion laws.
So they go beyond the boundaries of their own state. And there's even a bigger problem with these laws. They actually do something which is unconstitutional. The
But,
Constitution, go ahead.
No, so yeah. What they use this money for? They apply in the same issues of climate, or they use for different?
Well, they say they're going to use it to build things like retaining walls and to pay for flood damage, but there also be some that would be going to renewables. But by the way, the New York law is opposed by more than 20 states. Other states, they are opposing and suing the New York law along with other industry organizations. But these laws, as I'm about to say, are unconstitutional. The Constitution of the United States specifically prohibits things called ex post facto laws. And an ex post facto law is a law that was passed that says we're going to penalize you for past emissions or damages when the law wasn't in place. That's not allowed. And all of these states have said that we're going to penalize you for things you did prior to the law being in place. So that is unconstitutional. So these states, all these state laws are going to be struck down. The Justice Department is going to attack them. Other groups are going to attack them, and they're not going to be supported by the courts in the United States. So really, really big changes.
Yeah. And agencies like NESA or NOAA are still active. Are they doing their jobs?
I'm sorry, agencies like what?
And NOAA
Yeah.
and NESA.
Yeah, well, we got to talk about those too. So the other thing, as you say, Mr. Trump is doing is it looks like he wants to get rid of climate change everywhere. So he's cutting funding to all of these federal agencies wherever they have climate programs. And NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, two big organizations in the United States are having their funding cut. NASA, it's going down by about 50%, and NOAA, it's going down 27%. This is in fiscal year 2027. It's being proposed. It's not finalized yet. But one of the big things that's occurring is that these organizations are the ones that run the United States climate models. And they've been going on for many, many years now, more than decades, about 35 years, ever since Dr. James Hansen testified before the United States Congress in 1988 that he was 99% confident the world was getting warmer and that there was a high probability that it was due to human greenhouse gas emissions. Dr. Hansen was a computer modeler. And so there are 13 climate models in the United States, roughly a third of the world's total. And most of these are at NASA, NOAA, and also the Department of Energy. So what is going on is funding is being cut in all of these agencies. Mr. Trump hasn't publicly said it yet, but I think he wants NASA to work on space exploration, which was their original task, not climate. And so he's also cutting funds for climate as well.
But these agencies, do they have enough regulation or too much regulation? What's the real case?
Well, this isn't a real big regulation issue. They have been funded for many, many years from the U.S. Congress to run these climate models. And then we have all these groups that rely on them. We have the United Nations, we have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we have states. We have non-governmental organizations. By the way, you can pop up the next slide if you want.
Sure.
And I've got a great cartoon there. That cartoon is about it's about the supercomputer climate models, and it's from my second book, The Mad World of Climatism. And there's a picture of Dr. Hansen testifying as well. But these are the heart of the climate alarm across the world. These models, they produce these projections saying the Earth is warming. And it appears right now that they're not going to have money to carry on. Mr. Trump is closing these down. So really a big issue. And of course, there are a lot of people screaming about this. And of course, there will be a fight in Congress as well, because these budgets will have to be approved. And so all the climate change advocates will be fighting, digging in their heels and fighting these proposed changes.
Is this a part of the big debt that the United States has today, $36 trillion? These cumulative errors?
Well, it is. Yeah, a lot of things Mr. Trump are doing. He wants to cut at least about $1 trillion from the budget. He also wants to raise money from tariffs, one of his goals. And he's trying to restore his tax cut, which is set to expire for U.S. citizens and businesses. So, yeah, a lot of this is a budget issue, but it goes beyond that, because as you said before, Mr. Trump really is trying to get rid of climate. They're taking it out of websites, climate change. Other examples are that the Coast Guard just removed climate change from their training course for new people coming into the Coast Guard. I mean, there's just a lot of things going on, and it looks like the climate models are going to be knocked down here, which really will be a big event.
But Stephen, is it possible to reduce budget of these regulators? I do not see viable to reduce these costs.
Oh yeah, he can reduce it. The question is whether Congress will agree. The budget each year is approved by Congress, and so he's going to have to get a lot of this through Congress. But the executive branch has a lot of latitude there. They run the government. The executive employees and the laboratories report to the White House and the executive branch. And if he wants to close them down, there's a lot of legal backing for him to do that.
Yeah. Going to solar and wind power, do you see with these mega tariffs that the United States supplying everywhere, is it still, they are still viable, or they were not viable in the past? What's your vision about that?
Well, they have, I think we've talked before about how poor investments wind and solar are, and electric vehicle charging. Nobody's making money on electric vehicle charging. So Trump is cutting subsidies to all these things, and they've been heavily subsidized in the past. And now we have this big issue with tariffs that is really a big issue. Earlier this month, President Trump imposed tariffs on nations across the world, as you know.
Yeah.
And these things are going to hammer green energy. Now he has a 10% tariff on everybody, on imports from every nation right now. And he's also put tariffs on steel and aluminum and automobiles of 25% coming in the United States. It appears that he has two goals. One is to raise money for the Treasury.
Yeah.
But the other is to try and balance out trade effects. And so in addition to these tariffs, he's talked about reciprocal tariffs with all nations, including Brazil.
Yeah, including
and
Brazil.
So, yeah, he now has 130 nations that have come to him, come to the United States and saying, he said, well, we're going to postpone these reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. And so there's 130 nations now lined up to negotiate with the United States to try and balance out tariffs. And I think that's a good thing. China is the one outlier. China has said, well, we're not going to negotiate. We're just going to put tariffs on you. And so right now, the United States has something like 145% tariffs on Chinese goods coming in, and China has like 100% on U.S. goods. And the big thing about this is that these are going to be really big impacts on solar.
Internal price, for instance.
Yeah, and batteries. 90% or 80% of the solar cells that come to the United States come from China.
Yeah, sure.
And many of the battery components on the batteries, As a matter of fact, one of your folks, I think a woman called Anna Tony, your climate secretary and
From
chief
Brazil?
executive of this year's UN COP30 summit, she has publicly raised concerns. Yeah, you can bring up that next one. She's on the bottom there. She has publicly raised concern about this tariff war and says this is really going to hurt green energy. And she's 100% right on that, particularly in the United States. It's going to be very, very tough for companies to continue to put down solar cells. They're just going to cost too much. Batteries for cars, batteries for grid scale batteries, those sorts of things. So really a big deal. Again, hammering green energy. And by the way, there's another issue too. We're getting a lot of our offshore wind turbines from Europe. And the ones that haven't been shut down because Trump has shut down the licenses are now going to have to pay a tariff to get those in. And so that's another big impact on wind. So you're right. We're going to have many, many companies go bankrupt, many projects go bankrupt. And it's just going to be really an ugly year and probably an ugly 4 years for green energy.
But price internally in the United States will increase a lot because of these tariffs, no?
Yeah, I think so. Some of it will. I mean, there'll be a few things that happened. For the consumer goods, people are going to look around for U.S. suppliers, or they're going to go to Southeast Asia or elsewhere. But yeah, prices are going to go up some, no doubt about that. But we already have people like Walmart that are saying, "Okay, Mr. Supplier from China, you have to lower your prices." So there's going to be kind of a balance. But obviously, 100% tariffs is just going to shut everything off from China.
10, 20% something acceptable, but 100% is impossible.
Well, I think they'll get to a negotiation on this eventually, and we certainly do it we will negotiate with Canada and Brazil and Mexico and try and get balances there.
This lady probably will be executive director of COP30. So imagine the impact of this situation of tariffs in this meeting on November.
Yeah, it could be huge. And also the other thing we've talked about, Mr. Trump has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement. He's cut off any funds to the United Nations for the COP30, for the COP conferences. He's also closed down a group called USAID that was sending billions of dollars to the UN and to COP.
Yeah.
I think our total is about 7 or 8 billion a year that'll disappear, and that's something like 10% of the funding that was going to UN climate initiatives. So it's a pretty big deal.
What do you expect for electric vehicles and trucks, manufacturing plants, and the cars themselves? Bankruptcies, or they still keep?
Well, that's going to be a big deal, of course. I think the companies that can produce electric vehicles in the United States, I'll think they'll be okay. But we have some of those that are really having problems already. For example, we just had a company earlier about a month ago called Nikola that filed for bankruptcy. They were an electric vehicle and van and small truck manufacturer. We also have another company that's on the ropes called Rivian. Rivian lost just about, I think it was $400 million last year. They just got a big loan from the Biden administration before President Biden left office last fall. He approved a $6.6 billion loan to build an electric vehicle plant in Georgia. And boy, I don't know if I don't know if Rivian's going to be around to do that. We have another company called Plug Power that is producing green hydrogen. But Plug Power's stock price went below $1 per share the other day. They're going to be delisted from the market, from the stock market. They have lost $3 billion in the last 20 years, and in 28 years, Plug Power has never made a profit. By the way, you can put those up if I've got a slide on each of those.
This one.
Let's see if that's the next one. Yeah, there's the logos of all three of those. This is one area where we just have a lot of problem. These companies are struggling. The only real big success has been Tesla, which became a very valuable company, but now they're having a lot of problems too. A lot of it's because people are attacking Tesla because Elon Musk is in the administration. But their sales are down 74%. I'm sorry, their earnings were down 74% in this last quarter. So just a lot of problems already mounting for green companies.
Mhm, mhm. But okay, EVs, trucks, and the military tanks with batteries. Do you believe that in Ukraine, Gaza, and soon Canada, Greenland, Mexico, they can use tanks with batteries, electric tanks?
Yeah, well, that's the next topic, if you will. You could put up the next one. This is about
Sure.
the U.S. Department of Defense. Oh, yeah, I think you got to go back one.
This one?
Yeah, next, go forward one.
Oh, forward.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, Pete
This.
Hegseth is our,
This.
you're bouncing around. Go back. Go back one more. One more back. Stop there.
Okay.
So that's at the top is a picture of Pete Hegseth. He's our new Secretary of Department of Defense in the United States. And he recently wrote that the Department of Defense, quote, does not do climate change crap. And this is another example of the Trump administration, but he said they do training and warfighting. And it's amazing how much money that the U.S. Military has spent on climate over the last 15 years or so. The Department of Defense in the United States is the biggest institutional user of petroleum-derived fuel in the world, 4.6 billion gallons a year or so. And the biggest one that's been spending money is the Navy. Back in 2011, excuse me, the U.S. Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, said basically that he was going to run the Navy, half the Navy fuel, on biofuels by 2020. And he had a thing called the Great Green Fleet. I think you've got an emblem there of the Great Green Fleet. But it was a tremendous failure. They ended up spending almost $100 billion, the Navy. And by 2022, less than 1% of the ships that were using fuel, less than 1% of that fuel was biofuels. So it was a big disaster. But as you say, not only the Navy, but we even had the military.
Military.
Yeah, the Army that was talking about electric tactical vehicles on the battlefield, even heavy vehicles, which are tanks. They wanted to run them on electrical engines. And, the first problem with that is you get 1/20th of the power with an electric motor that you get from a diesel fueled vehicle. But then they also had plans to build battlefield chargers. They were going to wield chargers on the battlefield and try and charge tanks for hours. None of this stuff has any military value. None of it has any readiness value. It's all to try and stop man-made warming, and really crazy. Well, anyway, Mr. Hegseth is shutting all that down, and just another big change in the United States to get away from this climate mania.
Steve, please clarify to us the point of who are opponents of green energy in the US, because Elon Musk is in favor of electric vehicles, but is working in a Republican Party government. So, and other situations, who is opposite and who is in favor?
Well, much of the Democrat Party that was in power during the Obama administration is for green energy. And we still have a big split in the country. And again, I'm not really opposed to green energy per se. I think it's a little bit foolish, but I am opposed to the subsidies. There was a law called the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022 under President Biden. And that literally is sending currently $100 billion a year to green initiatives, wind and solar and electric charging and carbon dioxide pipelines, carbon dioxide capture, green hydrogen. Now, Mr. Trump is withholding a lot of those funds now, and he's trying to scale all that back. That's going to require an effort from Congress. But so we're sort of a mix here. Wind and solar continue to grow, but the big winners are going to be natural gas because we have this tremendous demand for electricity now, and wind and solar really can't keep up with that.
And in terms of U.S. counties, I mean regions and cities. You mentioned that there are 500 U.S. counties that are with restrictions to implementation of green energy.
Yeah, we have another thing happening, not only the Trump administration, but we now have a pushback from many states, not all of the states, but for example, we have Oklahoma, which is a big wind state, now is banning the law for eminent domain. Eminent domain says that the government or a company can seize the land of a landowner for a infrastructure project like a pipeline or a wind system. They're banning that in Oklahoma. In Arizona, there's a bill in the legislature that would ban wind systems on more than 90% of state land.
Wow.
And that's because of a big setback. And as you mentioned, back in 2011, this is data from, I think it was USA Today did a study. There were only 2 counties in the US that had restrictions on wind turbines. Now there are more than 500 counties. That's now 16% of all the counties in the United States that have bans on wind turbines or have restrictive laws, and that is growing and growing. We're also seeing solar restrictions grow, and there are many, many reasons. You can pop up the next slide. This is a great picture that a congressman in New York sent me, and it's in my latest book, Green Breakdown. You can see the man standing there in front. That's a huge pile of wind turbine blades in New York, and they don't know what to do with these things. You know, if you have to replace them and they break down, you can't put them in landfills, and it's very, very difficult. You have to have a very big landfill to do this. In Europe, I think they're chopping them up and burning them, which puts carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They can't really be recycled. And this is just one of the issues. But a lot of states, a lot of counties and cities just don't want these things anymore. And so it's getting tougher and tougher to deploy these in the United States.
These parts will be sent to where? Is there a deposit?
Yeah, I don't know where they're doing this, what they're doing with this in New York. I know in Iowa, they're shipping them to a neighboring state, Nebraska or Kansas, where they had really big landfills. They couldn't get them in Iowa anywhere, but it's a problem. Solar cells as well. Solar panels are wearing out in California, and you know, trying to get those into landfills, you can't recycle them very well. It's just a big issue.
You mentioned in your text about CO2 pipelines. Please explain what is CO2 pipelines, please. And
Yeah.
South Dakota is passing a bill banning the domain of CO2.
Yeah, pop up the next slide that shows the map. There's a company called Summit Carbon Solutions that is proposing to build this big pipeline system throughout the Midwest and take captured carbon dioxide from ethanol fuel plants and run it up to North Dakota and bury it underground. And the reason they're doing this is the federal government is offering, under Biden, again, the Inflation Reduction Act, offering huge subsidies both to capture CO2 and to put it underground. But the problem is now that, again, and by the way, they had issued big stacks of legal suits to like 500 different farms in the area, big piles of paper, trying to take their land with eminent domain. Well, the state of South Dakota has now passed a bill banning eminent domain for the CO2 pipelines. And so Summit Carbon Solutions doesn't know how they're going to get this thing built. And this is just another example of homeowners, landowners pushing back. They don't want the pipelines through their property, and they don't want the safety issues that come along with CO2 pipelines.
And the old battle, the old war, natural gas and LP for appliances, is still working, or it's over?
Yeah, we have a war going on in the United States over whether you can have a gas appliance in your home. And we now have 7 states where cities or counties, or in the case of New York State, the entire state have banned gas water heaters, furnaces.
But do they have power enough to prohibit this appliance, or the federal law is bigger?
Well, there's kind of a mix. We already had a law struck down in California that they were trying to do this, but the states find ways to get around it. They talk about efficiency or some other things. But the interesting thing is now we have 7 states that have laws opposing gas and new construction, but we have 24 states that have passed laws that say that the mayors of cities and the managers of counties can't pass a law restricting energy. So those folks don't get much headlines, but they're actually winning.
Okay. I have a point, very specific point that I would like to see your vision.
Yeah.
Nearshoring for the United States is friendshoring is impossible because the United States, there is no more friends for the United States at this time with the big tariffs. But nearshoring is complicated because Canada and Mexico are not very well with the United States. Reshoring with these big tariffs will be the solution. You believe that they can reconstruct the factories, manufacturing plants, and the industry in the United States only by the tariffs?
Well, I think there'll be a balance. Again, I think Mr. Trump has two objectives. One is to get a better balance than we've had in terms of tariffs. I don't know the real situation with Canada and Mexico. I think they have they're allowed to import and we're not allowed to export in some cases, but there's kind of a mix. Other countries may be worse. But the other thing that Mr. Trump would like to do is raise revenue for the Treasury. So I think he's going to keep a 10% tariff on everything. He's going to negotiate other things, and we're going to end up with a more balanced situation. But he is trying to do something nobody has ever done in the history of the world. This thing of changing tariffs throughout the globe. It really is a big gamble and a big risk. And the question is, will there be enough time? Often tariff laws take months and months and months to negotiate. And he's trying to do this with more than 100 nations in about 90 days. We'll just see. I have to see if that's possible.
In one of your books is related to renewable energy collapse.
Yeah.
Do you still support this vision?
Well, I think it's actually happening faster than I was projecting in my book, Green Breakdown, The Coming Renewable Energy Failure, in part because Mr. Trump has accelerated it in the United States. Now, this book talks about the complete proposed transition to green energy, away from hydrocarbon fuels. It talks about power plants and electric vehicles and home appliances, heavy industry, heavy transportation. It's a fun book, though, as well as you get the science and the economics, but there's also 150 color sidebars, like this one headline. These are all real headlines. Britain's advice to stop showering to conserve energy. And there was even an official in Switzerland who said that everybody should shower with a friend to conserve energy, which sounds kind of fun, but there's just all sorts of crazy things going on. But over the next couple of decades, we're going to see the world get back to sensible energy policy. We are going to see a mix in the future of EVs and regular cars. We're going to see a mix of renewables and hydrocarbons, but we're not going to get rid of hydrocarbon energy by 2050. That's beyond anything sensible, just not going to occur. But anyway, people can go to my website, Steve Gorham, GOREHAM.com. I'll send them a signed copy if they buy one. You can also get it on Amazon, or there are ebooks available as well, which are less expensive for the people in Brazil.
Great. I see 2 points from you today. The word balance, you repeat 3 or 4 times, balance.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And the second point that I perceive from you, you are an optimist now.
I'm an optimist?
Yeah.
Well, I try to be. I think eventually science and economics will win out. And the other thing is that the fear of man-made climate change, the ideology of climatism, that is going to pass away. I've got a friend in England, Dr. Benny Peiser. Maybe you may know him, but he recently spoke. He's was head of the Global Warming Policy Foundation in England. He says people in England are just jaded with all this climate stuff. They don't believe it anymore. They've heard these warnings for decades. We just had the Alternative for Deutschland party in Germany that took number 2 in the polls. They took about 25% of the vote. They have a platform of no more wind turbines, a ban of wind turbines in Germany, which is really remarkable. So we see a lot of things happening globally. And, the bottom line is the only sensible policy with climate is to adapt to it we can't control Earth's climate. That's really a fallacy.
Perfect. Steve Gordonham, thank you so much. Nice
Thank you,
conversation.
Armando.
Thank you.
Until the next time.
Till next time. Bye.